Hi everybody, I'm Dave Gilchrist. I work at Bookmarks, and I'm here tonight to introduce tonight's book event, which we are very fortunate, very privileged to have two authors tonight who will be in conversation with each other. We have Louise Raw, who's the editor of Striking a Light, a very important history work about the Match Women's Strike in the East End of London. And Louise will be in conversation. We'll be talking with A.L. Kennedy, our other author tonight. It was, in fact, Louise's idea that we do this. So we've got them together and hopefully there'll be a fruitful conversation. A.L. Kennedy, of course, is the prize-winning author, Costa Prize-winning author, and author of many novels and books of short stories. And her latest, We Are Attempting to Survive Our Time, has recently been released in paperback, and you can buy it from Bookmarks, should you so wish. Because you can buy it online, or you can now come into the shop. We've been open for about 2 weeks now, and while Bloomsbury's still very quiet, actually we're very glad to see many of our old customers back again. Anyway, didn't come here to listen to me. I'm going to hand you over now. We've got Louise and A.L. Kennedy. There they are. And I'm just going to hand over to them. Louise is going to introduce and we'll take it away. There'll be plenty of time at the end for questions and comments. You can put them in the chat, both on YouTube and Facebook and on Twitter as well. And I'll read them out and we'll put the questions to our authors tonight. So over to you, Louise. I think is going to speak first.
L to the K. It is fantastic and ridiculously talented. Was Alison Louise Kennedy. Award-winning, God, not half. I gave up counting at about 17. I don't want to say you're making the rest of us look bad, but something to consider for the future. You know, there is a bit of a trade union principle of not overworking and making everyone else look bad. So for us kind of less talented and lazier, I'm just going to say lazier authors.
Says the woman who's out every Saturday demonstrating for things.
But you've written, God, is it 10 novels and 6 short story collections and non-fiction? She just chucks a bit of non-fiction in there while she's at it as well. A few children's books, bit of screenwriting. You know, I mean, why not? Why not? And more awards, I think, are in the bag because the reviews have been scorching for We Are Attempting to Survive Our Time, which indeed we all are. I mean, what a brilliant and fortuitous title, because I assume the title was picked before the time became so difficult to survive.
Yeah, I mean, it was back in the good old days of just dying of austerity and just being harassed to death by the DWP, which...
Good days.
Sunny uplands. So, yeah, I kind of knew it was going to be relevant, but then it became a lot more relevant, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, are you some kind of a witch? Did you know what was coming? Is this whole thing just a scam to sell books? Did you start, A.L. Kennedy? I put it to you. Did you start this pandemic?
Yes, I started breeding plague-infected pangolins in my back garden.
Bloody knew it. Bloody knew it. I had a suspicion all along. It's typical, but it's typical of a Corbynista, quite frankly.
It's very true. Or it was a very predictable result of climate change. But, you know, it's one or the other.
That too. But you must have been not pleased, obviously. No one's pleased about the pandemic, are they? We shouldn't certainly be. But you must have thought, wow, that wasn't a bad title to pick, Alison. That's such an apt one it's become, hasn't it? For horrible reasons.
Well, I kind of wondered. I mean, it started out, I wanted it to sort of be a little, you know, if you were in a bookshop, you'd kind of think, oh, well, somebody gets it. My life is unbearable hell and I've got no one to say. And then when it came out on the first day of the first lockdown in hardback, and you were thinking, is it so on the nose that people are going to go, yeah, not now.
Yeah.
I mean, as it turned out, it just was unavailable, so you couldn't make the decision to buy or not buy it. But I wondered, but it's, it had been finished almost a year before day zero.
Yeah, before it all hit and before the title went from sort of how a lot of us are feeling to a very general thing indeed. You're going to read to us, we're very lucky that you are, from a wonderful story, a story that I strongly relate to. As you know, I relate to lots of stories in the book. I have cried, really, through the book. For good reasons. Yeah, I may sue for emotional distress. I'm still looking into whether that's possible with my legal team. But I very strongly relate to the story that you're going to read us from now, Inappropriate Staring. Take it away.
Okay, this started out just as a sort of dialogue in a different book, which I was kind of okay with, but then I wanted it to be within a story. So the story so far, because I'm not starting at the beginning, is that somebody has gone to Jersey to clear up the remains of, not literally the remains of, but what's left of the life of somebody who was not an uncle but was sort of referred to as an uncle, and it's a bit of an undefined place in this only child's early family, and then he kind of disappeared. And the only other thing you need to know, the narrator is obsessed by chuffs, and they're a very reasonable thing to be obsessed by, and I am myself, and goes to the Gerald Durrell, the Jersey Zoo, to see chuffs. And of course, there aren't any chuffs. They're away. Their chuff habitat is being improved with water slides and a cinema. So they aren't there. So she's disturbed for lots of reasons. And then she comes across the kind of couple that you occasionally come across who are a little bit loud. So we're up to that point, and we're in the zoo. So there, right there. You don't know how to spot them, you don't. All of which I mentioned before was to establish that the whole of my zoo outing has turned depressing by this stage, and long story, Jersey is a bit of a downer too, and I'm slightly lost. 32 acres are available after all, but I eventually do find the bird area and within it the location of the aviary for the chuffs. Naturally, quite naturally, there are no chuffs. They are not that remarkable chuffs. You needn't go climbing trees in the Hesperides to find one. They're not like some of the other creatures here, practically unicorns, manticores, baby krakens. They're just chuffs. But I did come all this way, and I don't need cheering, and they're not here to cheer me. But they're mixed up with my childhood and wearing sandals and liking fun and encountering, that's the verb I want, encountering miraculous livingness. I needed that. The day in question is one when I really needed some chuffs. The chuffs have been moved, allegedly, not to baffle me, but because their accommodation is being upgraded. Water slides and trampolines, massage tables, I don't know. Maybe chuffs are demanding. Maybe the zoo authorities will reconstruct their tiny reservation with an 80-foot cliff inside for aerial playtimes. They would like that. Where? There, right there. You don't know how to spot them, you don't. Principal fact to remember, there are no chuffs. And I know I ought to trudge about in the midst of all this unmythological and yet still wonderful wonder and enjoy it, but I feel disinclined. I have left, long story, not Uncle Mort's house behind me, and I sort of miss it while also being pained by its existence. I am thirsty. I have mislaid my way to the restaurant. I am, to be precise, really thirsty. I understand the zoo has to be generously proportioned. They're trying to save all life on Earth or something like that. The kind of enterprise that would take space, but just a vending machine or else a water fountain every 1,000 yards or so would be really helpful. Very thirsty. It will be hours until the next bus takes me back to the surly substance abuse and architectural shine of St. Helier, its offshore money breeding recklessly out of sight in secure enclosures. Then I'll get a cab back to Not Uncle Mort's. I won't sleep well, long story, surrounded by the boxes of books, wrapped parcels and stacks of paper. He was in the Navy, so he left no mess. The masses and masses of paper, pulp and ink and information were stowed neatly away. They still are masses and masses, unmanageable masses of stuff, though. They overwhelm me. I can't imagine how his joints withstood the weight. And this, when I'm not in a glorious mood, is when I come upon the crowd, the thick ring of people surrounding a picturesque and suitably entertaining island. It's where they detain the gorillas, those talismanic, huge, almost people with reproachful eyes. Where? There, right there. You don't know how to spot them, you don't. And also there is this man and this woman, their voices like a swift jab to your ear. Nevertheless, I begin by being glad of them. They're a distraction. Oh yeah, fast, isn't he? And cheeky. He's into everything, look at that. I was looking. You were the one who didn't notice him. There are people in life who can only exist by explaining their every experience out loud as a kind of reassuring chiron ticking along at the foot of their personal screens. They love sitting on trains and narrating their passing emotional states into phones which may or may not be connected. The habit seems needy, but I've never quite known which particular need it speaks to. Man's voice. Is it a hymn? Woman's voice. Of course, a girl wouldn't be like that. Girls aren't into everything. Girls are quiet, should be. I love it when women are sexist. It doesn't at all make the whole of my woman's heart stumble because goodness knows we shouldn't stick together. I can already guess how she'd take my single-handed existence. My being left by Peter's father would be my fault. My losing interest in being betrayed again would be unnatural. Boy needs his father. Well, I did try telling his father that. But she's a person of her generation. Grew up seeing mums in the kitchen, women taking care, women saying yes or saying nothing. People are shaped by situational pressure and can't often resist it. They are even punished if they try, and anyone can love anything given time, even misery. The man runs on, almost jovial, but with an edge. You can't tell, though, can you, not with that lot? I mean, they're all like that, see? Running about and climbing and getting in everywhere. Whole swarm of them. He laughs down his nose at a not very private joke, considering he's almost shouting. And this is when I get the wince in my stomach. The tension. It's a much more familiar tension now. As I said, this incident happened a few years ago at a time when it might have been an outlier and not the norm. They can't be a swarm. That's bees. And I'm on a kind of break here. Long story, not a holiday, but a break. And breaks are supposed to be pleasant. And I'm trying to avoid my repeating recollections of Not Uncle Mort wearing Not Uncle Mort's jackets, rather than there being only full of coat hangers and air. I am putting the jackets away, and this gives me something to do. I am bubble wrapping crockery I never saw him use, because someone will surely want it. We live in a time of unfulfilled and arbitrarily inflicted wants. I am opening, long story, letters and letters and letters, old letters. I am not depressed, but I feel assaulted and much smaller than would be usual when compared to the average size of reality. And I am genuinely disappointed by the lack of bloody chuffs. And this makes me feel petty. I hate to be petty. And I am thirsty. I am thirstier every time I swallow. In short, there are numerous reasons for my allowing myself to say something like, oh, and now I have to listen to racism as well. But instead, I keep my head down. I act like a coward here. I am a coward. If I'm acting like one, then I am one. I don't say a word. I pretend that I've probably misheard the little whistle for the nasty dog and fight hard to assume that I am in fact mistaken and no harm has been meant. The man of the pair does not help me with this. He'd be in your windows and up on your roof and sitting on your chairs all at once. That's a fact. I've read they're very strong. Impulsive, that's the word. The woman has the 1950s accent she's kept carefully all this time, fastidious about consonants and with aspirational vowels. He's a boy. Boys are like that. Look at his little face. That's a boy, that is. And there's his little fingers. The man has a voice invented not so long ago, apparently with the sole intention of more perfectly expressing angry whiteness. There's his dirty little fingers. His underlying fury may be further stoked by the fact that his choice can make him sound now and then exactly like an urban black kid of the 1990s. He must occasionally make himself want to cut out his own tongue, and that's surely unpleasant. Then again, speaking as a white person, I am very tired of angry whiteness. And I am very thirsty. And my childhood was not my childhood. It belonged to Gerald Durrell, and he is dead in the way that not Uncle Mort is also dead. And Mort was the only person who ever let me scamper along cliffs in sunshine, and I saw him maybe once a year. Came out and stayed with him in Jersey maybe once a year, until the time when everything stopped and I didn't know why. It's as if I got orphaned early, and there are no fucking chuffs. And now here is this couple talking, skirting around a definite longing to hate someone out loud. The woman, a pensioner woman, is in a sun hat and a frilly, silly blouse that makes you feel, well, I'm not that sure what, perhaps indulgent towards her. And you are also aware that she will need serious healthcare soon and will find there isn't any. She will be the sort of tiny tragedy that no one bothers much about. She's wearing those slightly medical shoes that are good for swollen feet, a skirt with a flamboyantly cut hem and girlish earrings, which suggest she has fantasy gypsy aspirations, not at all reliant on liking actual gypsies, Roma, Sinti in any way. So I may be not the only one with unsuitable ideas about how I'll eventually turn out when I'm grown up. Really grown up, not just older and more dog-eared, actually grown up. She's sporting a very fresh perm. She's having a day out, is what the perm says. She's a person, a human person, with just enough money, but you can see things are tight. Everything about her is both inexpensive and not hard-wearing. Still, she's brought it all together with consideration. She wants to look nice. People want to look nice. The man beside her has the same flatliner mouth and the same pendulous earlobes. He is a little more overweight than she is, but it's close-rung thing. Cargo shorts, check shirt with sleeves rolled. The cloth is tense across his back and grips his biceps with a kind of desperation. Sandals with Velcro straps. I can't see him that well. Can't see his face at all because his mother is nearer to me and conceals him. I'm assuming she's his mother. Human people have relatives. They care for them and take them. God help us, go with them. God help us, to the zoo. The mother, let's call her, the mother is beginning to look anxious. You can guess that she has experience of his going off on one, having read the paper of a morning and such like. She offers, well, he's been playing, hasn't he? Oh, and here's Mum. And at this point, a female gorilla does amble in with some urgency towards what may indeed be her infant. She's not happy with him, you can tell. I can tell. A mother knows a mother no matter what. You can be as different as anything, but a mother knows when she sees a mother and he's caught on that she's cross. He's nervous, wants to hold her hand. You always wanted to hold my hand when I was going to give you a row. Remember, she'll clout him, I bet. She is creating patter as a distraction. So I'm fairly sure now that the woman is his mum, the man's mum. And she is also as splendid a passive-aggressive heap of voluntary weakness as you can probably find in the assembled gorilla viewing audience. While thinking this, I have to reproach myself for being judgmental and acknowledge that she does, after all, have this angry son and may have an angry husband and more large angry sons at home. She may have very few options when it comes to strategy and self-defense. people do have strategies. Their efforts may be ineffective, but they make them just the same. We all tend to try what we can. Well, she can give him a row, can she? They don't exactly speak. Her son is very good at contempt. It appears to be his strategy and self-defense, and he is perhaps feeling uneasy because he is perhaps the kind of son with no idea of how to entertain his mother, who simply takes her for the kind of treats a kid would like, maybe the kind of treats she once gave him. History does repeat itself. I am more like my mother than I knew. Both she and my father are dead and cleared away, so I have no opportunity to confer, but I believe close examination of my fine detail would reveal more and more of her. They understand each other. I doubt it. Well, you didn't expect that. Wrong there, weren't you? The mother gorilla scoops up her round-eyed offspring and pets her or him. It's not rude to check when you're looking at animals, and she is indulgent, dexterous, fastidious. Giving him cuddles instead. Well, that's sweet. He's got round her. That's how you used to get round me. Give me the big brown eyes and put up your arms for a hug. Oh, mother, you are a one. The man leads forward, and I can see the flash of reddish energy in the eyes, the face, which is pre-furious, in the habit of rage. The skin is tinted with frustration and an irritating life. He is a person and must be a kind of constant, and must be in a kind of constant human pain to look that way. This is sad, if not a full-blown tragedy, playing out for random and possibly selected audiences. If we don't care, he may wish to make us. I will stop there.
Absolute joy to hear you read that, and such a combination of incredibly well observed, the way that your character finds pathos even in this horrible racist and his mum, finds touching details. I always picture the man as being Paul Golding of Britain First, Little Britain First, because he goes everywhere with his mum. And in fact, once when he was standing as mayor, he had this election campaign video of a random supporter of his talking to camera, and it was his mum. It was like blatantly, clearly his mum pretending not to be his mum. So I picture those two when I read that. And we were talking today about how Jada Franson of Little Britain First was getting a row from Nicola Sturgeon, who quite rightly, and whatever we think of Nicola's politics on occasion, fantastically called her a fascist and a racist, which indeed she is.
He's not wrong.
It's not wrong. I like your observation about racism and what makes people potentially tick who have these views, if we can dignify them with the term. And you talk about how it's based on lies, and you talk about the important role of history, or the role that history is not fulfilling sufficiently. You say, how superior can you be when everything you like about yourself is based on lies? And there in that sentence is the British experience of waving the flag for Winston, loving the bleeding empire, and having no clue at all what actually happened, because you can't be proud of empire and know anything about that. And the other thing you say, which I think is so clever, your character says, is how much the man is enjoying his paranoia. And I think that's such an important part of the racist, fascist mindset, this paranoia. They're all out to get us. And I wonder if you could have predicted the way that during the pandemic, we've seen various paranoias, various conspiracy theories kind of grow to encompass the pandemic and to embrace fascism as well, and fascism to embrace it. We've got, QAnon, anti-vax, anti-mask, COVID denial, and of course the dear old far right have thought, there's some people not thinking very well and very straight. There's the irrational folk. That's our people.
There's not enough death. Let's have more.
Exactly. What we want is more. Could you have predicted how fast people have sort of become radicalized and enjoying their paranoia in the pandemic?
I mean, it's kind of Stalin and the KGB's original toolkit as peddled via Putin and Putin Stasi experience. I mean, it's not new. It is clever, but it's not genius and it's not new. People don't like change, so you can leverage their dislike of change. I don't like having to stop insulting casually everybody who doesn't look exactly like me. I find that a little uncomfortable. Well, let's turn that into excruciating martyrdom and flip it and have people be pre-outraged by everything, and indulge the idea that my entire life is being destroyed by not being able to scream the N-word in bus queues for no reason. And minor inconvenience is inconvenient. It's inconvenient to wear a mask. If everybody's wearing a mask in order to keep everybody safe, that's a huge demonstration of solidarity and concern for each other, and a huge demonstration that if we all cooperate, we can all help each other to be healthier and happier. So we can't do that. What we have to do is say it's a little bit inconvenient to wear a mask. It feels a little bit weird for half an hour until you get used to it, you massive baby. We'll leverage that minor inconvenience because people are feeling discomforted by lots of things, but mainly the government. So we'll leverage that and just make this enormous circular Venn diagram of misogyny, fascism, anti-vax, pro-QAnon, ignoring actual paedophilia, making up pizza fantasy paedophilia pyramids, and just stoke that so that people disappear from reality using media that any sane democracy would have looked at really hard a long time ago and said, crying out loud, you're effectively a newspaper. We actually vaguely try to control what you put in a newspaper. If you're not the new, or, how does Fox News get away with calling itself Fox News while every time it's hauled up in court to say you're ripping apart lives and democracies and you've drastically and hideously misled people and ruined this life and this life and this life, and you'll have to pay for ruining this life. And they always stand there and say, oh, yeah, but we're not news. We're just called news. It's like a surname. It's not a description. And Alex Jones can say, oh, I'm just psychotic. Nobody sane would believe me. Tucker Carlson said, look at me. I'm a TV dinner king who wears bow ties as something serious. Who would believe me? But I'm going to go, on an influential program and keep asking questions to which anybody could find answers in 4 minutes of Googling, as if they're unfathomable mysteries. How do they get the vaccine into the files? Is it loaded in by child slaves? Nobody's saying. Though, of course, they're not. You extraordinary moron.
But nobody's denied it, have they?
Nobody's denied it. Yeah.
It's horrible how effective it is, isn't it? It's horrible
great.
how
simple, tried and tested for almost as more than a century. I mean, propaganda works, and obviously they preempt that. So they're going to tell you that you're stupid. It's like nobody's saying that anybody's stupid. Propaganda is called propaganda and is known as a thing because it works. You don't get fooled by propaganda because you're stupid, but you will feel stupid when you've been tricked. Lying liars who lie are very good at lying. You will feel stupid when you find out they've lied to you, and they've weaponized that. People feel stupid when they've had their pocket picked or when they've had their bank account details, their identity stolen. They haven't been stupid, but the reaction is that you feel stupid, and they've preemptively sort of spiked that. And again, it's
make you feel
this. Yeah, we're going to weaponize this feeling of discomfort. So Hartlepool isn't stupid. No, Hartlepool has been horribly lied to. They won't get any money. They think that by voting Tory, they will placate the Tories who hate the North and hate people who work and hate people who are brown and hate people who aren't whatever they think Christian is. you aren't going to get any money, and it's too late.
Yeah, sorry, you're screwed. Really.
And Brexit was always going to eat you. Sorry.
Yeah, that was the plan. The plan was to make rich people a lot richer,
Yeah.
and that's it.
But lying liars who lie are very good at lying. And our lying liars who lie are amplified by every major media outlet now.
Which is astonishing. I can't remember quite seeing a time like this in my lifetime where there's just no speak truth under power. Don't be daft. We don't want to speak truth to anybody, let alone power. My goodness, we want to give them a round of applause for everything they do.
Sorry, there aren't any flags in the background. Well, there is. There's an EU flag in the background.
Oh, that's true. And I haven't got any flags. It's only because I've got so many flags in all my other rooms that, I just couldn't carry them all physically through to the rest of my flat. Is really the flag sort of area.
Effectively a flag annex, yeah.
Effectively.
And there's one outside, obviously, because I get worried.
And of course, I've painted a huge Union Jack on the front of my block as well, so I don't want anybody to worry at all on that score.
There's one tattooed on my arse as I speak.
Good. Can you show us that? Can you prove that?
Maybe towards the end of the reading.
We'll take it. We'll take your word on it. This one.
Of course, I'm not a lying liar who lies.
Down the line.
The lies aren't. In this case, the lies are not amazing and sophisticated. It's just that they're amplified and repeated so often that a rational person, when you go and see a magician, a rational person won't think you have a special mechanism to put that thing inside that box that's inside the ball of wool, that's inside that sherry glass. You want a more complicated solution than the magician is a magician and he has gizmos that will basically do pretty much anything. He's got that kind of mind. And you're walking in on, but it can't be on all of the front pages and be absolute nonsense, because that would be very strange. Surely there are laws to prevent this. Well, only if you apply them.
Only if you apply them. But it's in the paper. It's in the paper. So it must be true. We still hang on to a little bit of that, I think. And I think because humans are weird, even though we don't like being lied to and we feel stupid once we've realised, we're bloody reluctant, aren't we, to actually admit that. We invest and we just keep investing. We double down.
You double down. And this is, we have to teach to first year of senior school. We have to teach people the fundamentals of psychology. You just have to. You have to know about confirmation bias. You have to know about doubling down when you're wrong. We have to know about the structure of lies. We have to know about the assumptions we make about other people, because these guys looked at all of that 1950s, 1960s, 1970s psychological and sociological research, which was sitting there going, how do we stop Nazism happening again? How do we stop a kind of democracy being destroyed by a big lie and strongman fantasies and off the map hideous racism and sociopathy so huge and dominating that people who are normal are forced to act like sociopaths, like psychopaths, in fact. How do we stop that? And people like Dominic Cummings sort of went, okay, so if we reverse that, we will get a hellmouth full of bodies. Cool.
And exactly that. And I could imagine him saying that, just cool, because he's not even ideological, really, is he? He's not even particularly aligned to any political party. He just thinks that would be really fun to just mess with stuff and just break stuff.
Deeply inadequate, mediocre nihilist, like who's in the book, like a Ted Bundy.
Yes.
Not bright, not a genius, not extraordinary, barely managed to get anywhere with any of his studies, not dashing. Have you seen his eyes?
He's a creepy looking dude. I've never understood this. Oh, Ted Bundy, so darkly sexy and handsome. Oh, no, he's a creepy dude.
Yeah, and I really like to murder you and have sex with your corpse.
Yes. And
he's attractive.
Fairly open about that, really.
Pretty much. Very few hobbies. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of was his hobby. I like the way you say that. I love that story. Even that made me cry.
I'm sorry I've mentioned the story that made me cry.
The story, don't mention the last line.
I forgot.
But I listen to true crime sometimes, and I love the approach that your character, who is a podcaster, has to that, and how honest she is about that. Like, why do we insist on making these disgusting misogynists, these inadequate, deeply inadequate misogynists, whether they're Ted Bundy or Jack the Flipping Ripper? Of course, I keep tripping over being an East End Victorian historian. Why do we try and make these dudes sexy? Ted's nothing sexy about Ted Bundy. And I was so glad you said, people always say, oh, what a genius. He wasn't. He was just a bog standard, very unpleasant, inadequate geezer, and we've built him up into this kind of sex god. That's a very weird thing to do with somebody who wants to, as you say, kill you and have sex with your corpse. It's not something you'd put on Tinder as a selling point, really, for dating, and yet seem to be attracted to this in some bizarre way.
And I liked, of all among the wonderful things about Prime Minister Ahern down in New Zealand, when you have a mass killing, to completely erase the name of the killer and to only magnify the victims, that's just such a healthier approach, rather than to make. I mean, I think I wrote that story slightly off the back of there being a Ted Bundy movie.
Why?
Could you make a movie about the woman who escaped from him, who was being hit with a metal implement, and who looked at him and clocked him, and he tried to con her and got her into the car, and she got out, and she kind of knew you're not right, and she did what now we endlessly say: don't get into the car, don't leave the primary scene.
Yeah.
Are you really a policeman? Are you are you a lying liar who lies?
Exactly. And listen to your instincts for women as well, because we're so often told not to, aren't we? And you're probably being unreasonable. He's probably a perfectly nice man, but that gut reaction, that creepy feeling that people like that give you is something you absolutely have to listen to. Do you listen to true crime yourself?
I do. I listen to it a lot, because some of it's great, some of it is utterly infuriating. Some of it goes straight into QAnon. There's one British one which is just Lulu bananas. Apparently almost everyone is a Satanist paedophile. I mean, of the two of us, both of us will be.
God, who knew? I was hoping that wouldn't come out, actually.
Everyone is a Satanist paedophile, or someone who is ignoring the people naked in leather robes, wearing strange hats with horns, and and somehow drag artists reading children's stories in libraries is the gateway drug to sacrificing children whose bones can't be found because they've worked out there were never any remains found, so that makes it look a bit unreasonable. They found a solution to that, which is they eat all of the babies, and it's you
see, now you should have thought of that. It's obvious, really. That is what you would
including
do.
the bones. Have you ever eaten a child's skull? I mean,
not lately. No. You wonder if perhaps all the people who haven't really died of COVID, because no one really has at all, it's all a big hoax, but perhaps that's what's happened to them. Perhaps someone's eating the skeletons and corpses. Perhaps that's why they're not visible. There could be a tie-in here.
Well, I think the vaccine victims who have been turned into time-traveling zombies ate the people who've disappeared. I was really hoping for time travel with my first vaccination, and at the moment I just find myself at the top of my stairs wondering why I went up there, which is not a great kind. It's like obviously very small bits of time travel.
Perhaps that's how it starts, though. I mean, give it time. Have you had your second jab yet?
I haven't, so I'm hoping it will kick in there when I kill Hitler.
You see, that's probably where it all kicks in. You laugh. We're going to see this on Twitter as an absolute theory. Alison Kennedy, A.L. Kennedy said, she knows. You are Q. ALQ Kennedy. I'm asking myself now.
There you go.
You heard it here first, folks. You are, I must say, you're very funny as a writer. You're very funny in conversation. You're very funny for a lady, aren't you?
Yes,
Goodness.
women aren't funny. Women aren't
funny.
No,
of course they're not. No, but there are a few. You know, we're modern, aren't we? They are allowing a few funny women through these days. And you did stand-up comedy, which was actually brilliant. It's always amused me how much that sort of pissed off. You can't do that. She's a lady. You know, she writes books. It's all a bit much, really, that she can write novels and non-fiction and short stories. But now this woman thinks she can and actually can be funny as well. And you said about it, it really made me laugh. You said it's as if I've transgressed a natural law. We know that lawyers can become politicians, although proper legal training gives you the sturdy moral compass of an arms-dealing paedophile and removes your soul completely. But that's fine. But you doing live comedy for some reason completely freaked people out. Why do you think? And will you be going back to it?
Oh, that's big. It's interesting because, you know, there's the baseline thing, women aren't funny. Having to listen to a woman talking is physically painful and should never be inflicted on anyone. So that's offensive. And writing is high status, being a clown is low status, and people who like boxes really don't like that happening. But being a clown is also high status because you make people move. You make people's eyes dilate. You make them make noises. There aren't many things that you can do to someone that aren't like sex or fighting that actually affect people that as much as comedy. And for women to do that is freaky.
No, it's a bit powerful.
So it's very disturbing for a lot of reasons, and it takes literature away from people who stroke their beards and make it marks on paper, and who make, you know, the table. When I say table, do I mean the table that you mean when you say table? It's like, seriously, you want nothing to mean anything at all, you absolute fascist. Whereas language and poetry and storytelling, for almost the whole of their history, were not literate, were not about being able to read and write. This belongs to people. And one of the millions of magnificent things about doing gigs is you realize that people have already thought of their own very clever things about the political thing that happened this morning. TV never, you know, even at its finest, wasn't really catching up. People are much smarter and funnier than you can imagine, and will go with you on things and join in with things. And it just makes you feel very good about people. On a bad night, it doesn't. But it's very educational, because sometimes you'll walk out and you just won't be what people will accept because you're a talking woman. And sometimes you can do something with that, and it's interesting. I mean, if people are shouting anything, that's like a good thing. If they're just silent, that's the bad thing. Heckling is fine. Heckling is something. Heckling's like throwing you a sandwich. But the heckles are interesting, because the big one for women, always, 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 is you've got a big mouth, because talking. But it's such a shit heckle, because, well, it's so obviously... The comeback to it, because it's always a guy saying it, is, no, I haven't got a big mouth. You've just got a very tiny penis, and then you gallop on. And it's amazing that nobody's ever thought that that's obviously what the person is going to say to you.
But that would require the person to be funny, and you're a lady, so you can't expect the gentleman to realise that they've set up a wonderful goal for you. You can't, you know, you're tricking. It's this trickery that you're doing, you can't
This is
expect
true.
them to realise this is very unfair of you. I'm going to hand over to audience questions, probably.
At that
some
point.
stage. Things I want to ask you. But I want to ask you some lowbrow, prurient and smutty questions first, if that's
Good.
all right with you,
I'll try
because that's
and
very
respond.
much who I am. And I was very interested to see that in an interview a while ago, you said, quite a while ago actually, you said that when you cry, men try to hump you.
Oh,
You said
have
that
you
when
not
you're
had that?
trying to explain your sort of innermost workings of your emotional self and like perhaps a difficult relationship that you've just come out with, and you really think your male friends, presumably, I presume, not random blokes on the street, are listening and they're terribly sympathetic, and then they sort of offer you a shag to cheer you up, sort of thing. Does this still happen to you?
Well, I'm very old now, but it's sort of an infallible thing. I'm not, and I you know, when you're doing that with people, I mean, I don't want to make that sound too condemnatory. You would just see this sort of not a predatory thing. You would just see this bafflement and kind of despair going over this guy's face, and then they're going through a Rolodex of things that are nice, and they go, and at the top of the Rolodex is shagging. We could have a cuddle. It's sort of what distracts me when I'm very sad, and it's like,
so they're trying to help. They're thinking it'll cheer her up.
Yeah, and I mean, people do get freaked out by other people's grief.
True,
and other people would just not be able to say anything at all. But it's odd how little. Quite a lot of people have in the paper bag of things to offer a crying person, when quite often they just wanted to talk to you and have you listen and to say, "Oh, that's shit, isn't it?" And then you talk about something else or just have a laugh. But yeah, that, and when I had a neck collar, when I had this.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, that's like blood in the water. It's the only time I've been able to get a cab just by existing. It'd be like a queue of cabs would stop next to you in case you needed it. And actually being in a cab is too bouncy, so I couldn't take advantage.
And a rather famous novelist was quite excited by your.
I know. I feel bad about mentioning him by name, but so I won't again. But yeah, and have I seen him since? Probably not.
He's seen you and run. You haven't seen him.
Yeah, but there's that immediate fascination of, you're too slow and damaged to run away. Can I make a play for you? I mean, we're just animals. We're just animals.
Yeah, it's like that. Was it a Pete and Dud sketch?
Probably is the answer to that question.
It usually is, isn't it? About how men are aroused by vulnerability. And I think Peter Cook was saying, "Oh yeah, did you see the Pope in his coffin? Vulnerable, didn't he look vulnerable?"
And I mean, it works. I think it also works. That desire of women to fix really dysfunctional men is so we kind of want to mend people, and when it's a very fundamental injury, it's like, I don't know, eating or screwing. The other thing is just running away, which I might. As I don't know. I've got cake.
What can I offer you?
I've got cake. I've got breasts. What would make you feel better?
What should we start with? Combine the two, perhaps.
Yeah. If you look at bonobos or gorillas, it's we're quite restricted as people, because we just we're obviously some kind of like ape-like creature, hominid, and we don't touch each other as much, and we're not used to it, and the power dynamic of it. I mean, there's a big power dynamic in the social structures of chimpanzees and baboons and gorillas and everything, but the just casual touch, asexual touching, we don't have, and people actually think that laughing because you're amused is a very human thing. There's the sort of fear, smile, challenge, teeth baring thing that other creatures have, but laughing and humor, people reckon, is the equivalent of just combing through somebody's hair or just stroking, just that thing that like a spaniel needs, where it's like, I'm absolutely fine, but I just have to touch you a bit, because then I know that the universe isn't a vast wasteland of horror. And we don't quite, we don't deal with that. And like in
that.
And there's a northern restrained country, we really don't have that. I mean, like guys holding hands is very specifically about a couple and a sort of sexualized touch. And if when you get to warmer countries, guys just hold hands. It's just a thing, people hold hands. It doesn't just, we have this sort of toddler attitude. Oh, you love him. It's like, there are lots of reasons for holding people's hands, all of which are delightful. Do you want to sort of grow up a bit?
Very well. No, we're never going to do that. We're British. We should be immature and British to the end with our flags. I will hand over to questions. I have to ask you the question from my friend Emma. Hello, Emma Flowers in Spain. It's all right for some, isn't it? Living there very sensibly. And she's interested in your writing, but also your comedy. And she says, if it's true that the devil has all the best tunes, does the left also have all the best jokes? I think she's making a point about that right-wing comedy that we hear so much about but see so little of. Can right-wingers be funny on purpose?
The thing about comedy that you're delivering to human beings is, if it hates human beings, it's quite difficult for human beings to like. And the best comedy is you kind of throw everybody over a cliff, but you throw yourself first. And you're throwing people over not just because of what they inherently are. And the right is about hating people because of what they inherently are and can't help. And fragile dignity and paper tissue thin skin, which is inadvertently fantastically funny. But to stand on your dignity, it's like, no, they're going to hate you before you hit the mic.
Yeah.
No, you can't. The whole point of being human is to say, I am an idiot most days. I am such an arse. And comedy is like super magnified. I'm an arse.
It's because the punching up, isn't it? And
punching up, and also sort of punching at the essential absurdity of we're here without permission and then we leave just when we're getting into it. And, we've just worked it out. And, why teeth? What were they thinking? Sex. Really? You're going to do that with that? And it's all going to look like that? Are you having a song?
Absurdity of the human condition there.
Yeah, and that's what's funny, but it can't be funny if you're terribly, 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 and everything is about power.
Yeah. And if you're saying, I'm funny, I'm incredibly serious, you're funny, you're silly, but I'm not.
Yes, you're a silly little person. And
it doesn't work.
That
and you've just got the government then, haven't you? Rather than
what you've got is a rally and worshippers or a room full of people in Glasgow going, oh no. Oh, no.
And worse.
Yeah, you've got the Glasgow Empire going, oh, you think you can come here and we're going to think you're funny.
Yes, good luck with that.
No.
Thank you. Brilliantly expressed. Now, I think Dave from Bookmarks is going to come in with some audience questions for Alison. Over to you, Dave. Nope, he's muted.
You're muted, sir.
Oh, sorry. You think I'd be used to that by now after a year, wouldn't you?
No,
I was just saying a conversation there ranging from nihilism through right-wing comedy to breast cakes is clearly one for the record, I think. But I do have some questions that people have put in the chat, in the various chats. So maybe if I could just go through, I think I would just read out the various questions and then let you either or both come back on them, see what you think. Okay. Some of them are quite specific. Like Russ from Sheffield used to be. My computer is talking to me. Russ from Sheffield wants to know, where do you get your ideas from? We'll come back to that. Asked about the short story form as well. Apparently, and I think this is true in the shop as well, that short stories have become more popular again, and that more people are writing and more people are buying books of short stories. Is that, do you think, a function of the pandemic and the situation? Because I know I didn't read a book for about 6 months myself. I had difficulty in concentrating, and just constantly your mind was on. But then, so the question is, though, really, what do you find in the short story form, as opposed to the long novel form? Is it a better way to communicate, perhaps, or a way you prefer to communicate? And a question that kind of flows on from that, very much the language in your books is very special, isn't it? It's sort of acerbic in this last one, very much, what's in people's heads, talking like that as well, and so on. And relating that into another question that was asked, you were born in Dundee, you lived your early years in Glasgow, as we all know that, they certainly have a way with language in Glasgow, if you can understand it. And well, there you go. How does this all relate?
Okay, my COVID memory is going to cling to that. Short stories were, when I started, which is 30 years ago, a little bit more. Short stories already. The self-fulfilling prophecy was, and this as a bookshop guy, we will not advertise this product, so it will not sell well. So we will not give you a big advance. So because we haven't given you a big advance, we will not sell this. We will not advertise it. So it will not. And that's been the vicious cycle. And quite a while ago, since I've been writing and anybody's ever asked me, it's a glorious form. It's incredibly intense. You can really enter in because it's small. They used to be huge. Chekhov's short stories are massive. But it's 2,500, 3,000, 5,000 words usually. So it has to be so correct from the point of being a writer. You have to learn, hopefully, how to make everything work. So there's no fat on that to make it really function. So then your prose is really functional and you're training yourself to make it work. And then you can transfer that to a novel or to whatever you want. But the reader experience, it's not so long in this strange atmosphere that we've had, the incredible intensity of just looking at a flower and suddenly seeing the flower because you're still alive today and all the people you love are still alive, please God. That's in a short story. The short story is kind of always about that. It's always about those moments when you go, thank God everybody's still alive. Thank God I love the people that I love, and man, do I love them. There was that little text from one of yesterday's school gun incidents in America, just that panicky kid texting his mum and just saying how much he loved her. Because obviously that's everything. And writing at all is an expression of love. It's like, I'm ruining my day here and giving myself a headache to give you this thing that I hope is the most beautiful thing I can give you, that will push everything you could be thinking about out, which is a horrible thing for me to do. But I'm trying to make it the best I can. But I will probably never meet you. But I'm just trying to make you happy and give you company and get you through today, which is shit. And maybe then tomorrow I'll make something else, or somebody else will have, which obviously is why they're cutting funding to the arts, cutting arts training, cutting the ability to allow people to have arts, preventing anyone but them from having a voice. Truly, truly evil. no hope coming from anybody other than us, no communication from anybody other than us, no inspiration from anybody other than us, and please never have empathy. Short stories are so much about, here is somebody other than you who is interesting, other than you who is human. Try them on for a bit, see the world through their eyes, that thing that's beautiful if you're living in a time of peace and plenty and you just are greedy for more. But in a time like this is, yep, I wanted to check. Other people are as human as me, aren't they? Oh, yeah. Okay, I just wanted to touch base because apparently, supposedly not. So there's all that in a short story. I mean, I started writing them because they only took me at that point 3 months. And I was having little ideas because I was scared of having a big idea, because then that would be a novel and that would take at least a year. And if I screwed that up, I've blown a year. I mean, I love them both, but it's a different experience being, you say different things in different ways. I've said things as stand-up and as telly and as non-fiction and as fiction and as long fiction and as short fiction, and the way, it's like telling a story to a child isn't like telling a story to an adult, isn't like telling a story to adults in a bar, isn't like telling a story to adults at a funeral. And we understand that. Again, it's not a literary thing. This literary question, what is a short story? It's a story that's short. That's pretty much all and it follows the rules of things that are short. If you want it to work, I always say short stories are little, but they're little like a bullet. They are supposed to blow your mind. And a novel is a big old lump of wood. It'll still hit you, but in a sort of weirdly soft, slow way. It'll take ages to kill you with a big lump of wood. Unless you're Muriel Spark, who's got a really pokey bit of wood and she knows exactly where to stab you. And so her novels are very short. I don't know why everything turns to violence in my metaphors. I've had complaints in workshops where you're trying to tell me a metaphor. Well, imagine it's like a cat turned inside out. Why is it? Why? I think it purges my ambient distress, because I'm very much not a violent person. I was in the Peace Pledge Union. I was in the Peace Pledge Union at school and everything. So yeah, that's generally the prose and the short story thing. And long may they be even more popular. But you always get paid less. But they're very good as a shop window if you're a new writer. You can put them in a magazine. As my granddad said, you can read them on the bus. People like them. He's a very sensible man. So they're a good little finished. They're not an apprentice piece because you're painting. Even miniature is like, just little miniature. It's like, try doing it with a single hair in a boat in the middle of a windless Russian lake till you go blind. Just a miniature, you big old slappy, bad community mural novel writer. But you're doing a thing that's inherently small. And a novel is the thing that's inherently longer because it's got a bunch of people in it, or it's about the whole World War II or whatever. But it's not a literary thing. This is that's again why I do shows now rather than stand up. But if you have a thing to say that it would break your heart to not say, but it would also slightly break your heart to say, and you feel that you have to, that dangerous idea that is frightening will make you a good enough writer to say it, and make you question, have I said that bit right? Have I said that bit right? Would somebody who isn't me understand that thing? Am I genuinely saying the thing that's serving the thing that came to me to be expressed? And if not, change it. And that's it, really. There aren't that many tenses in English. There aren't that many voices in English. It isn't complicated. There's an industry out of making it complicated, but within that complication, you can avoid yourself and what you fear. And writing is about you and being terrified. but making a beautiful thing for someone who isn't you. It's M. Scott Peck, that the road less traveled guy. He describes love as extending yourself for the benefit of others. So writing is love. I keep going back to that, but it is, that's what art is about.
It's very nice. That's not violent.
Yeah.
And the Scottish aspect of all this, Dundee, Glasgow.
Yeah,
Doesn't this
Dundee.
bring something special in?
I think Dundee makes you want to scream while knowing that you'll never be heard, or it used to. I mean, it is a very different place now, but it's that small town thing. If you get off the train in a small town to do something, and there's somebody, there's a guy in makeup with blue hair wearing strange boots and a big Sergeant Pepper coat, and it's like, leave, it'll kill you. I know what you're doing, but you can't do it here. You either get stuck like that and it doesn't do anything, or you just leave. Just be yourself somewhere that will like you. Dundee was very small. I remember watching The Three Sisters, and just when they say to Moscow, it's like you just anywhere but here. Somewhere there's a theatre. And I watched every time I see Melvin Bragg, I hug him, and he now looks at me with fear. But when he starred the South Bank show, I saw pretty much every episode, and sometimes it was stuff that I didn't think I was into, and he made me be into it, and sometimes it was stuff that I loved with all my heart, and I didn't even know why. And it was fresh air and a window on everything, and I will hug him every time I see him. And it's just thank you for saving me and showing me that there was this world where I could function and be useful and grow. And that's very important. Glasgow, I always wanted to be in Glasgow because it's a big story, and it's hard and cruel and deprived and ugly, but the people are extraordinary and funny and fast and joke tellers and storytellers and genuinely kind of want to help you. Even while they're kind of robbing you, they also, it's a very strange, lovely, box annihilating kind of place. It's terribly funny. And like the architecture is extraordinary. It's like an enormous arts and crafts kind of sculpture, particularly the West End, which is where I ended up living. But it's like, I remember we got kettled in Sauchiehall Street by Strathclyde police. And I was not going to sit in a road. I'm a very sort of tentative demonstrator. I'll be at the demo and I'll speak at the demo, but I'm not going to do anything like blocking Sauchiehall Street. But sure enough, Strathclyde police helped us to completely bring Glasgow to a halt for about 3 hours. We were marching along. Horses go gallopy, gallopy, gallopy across the front of us. Turn round. Triple line of police behind us in riot gear. It's like, oh, okay. And then they start, squeezing us, which is always a good thing to do with the crowd. Just squeeze them and see what happens. So we all turned around again to look at the horses. And the then director of Scottish CND was climbing out over a fence. And a guy on horseback, this was, it was an Iraq War protest. And we were already preemptively helping it by invading and occupying it and ruining its artworks. And this guy raised his baton over the top of his head to hit the escaping then director of Scottish CND. And the entire crowd, as a man, just all went, ooh. And the guy with the baton sort of went, and then he and his horse, literally, I've never seen a horse creep. His horse tiptoed away and we never saw it again. All of the other horses were there going, machine. And he just left. And then everybody, an ugly thing, absolutely everybody collapsed with laughter. And we all sat down, and the young people, because they knew all the words, sang "We All Live in a Terrorist Regime." And we're there for 3 hours. And you just kind of thought, people are wonderful. This is just magnificent.
I can really appreciate the Moscow metaphor, because I grew up in Cumbernauld, and there's a sign. There's a sign there that says Carlisle, whatever it is, 93 miles. There's my whole life was just to get on that road, not to go to Carlisle.
I was going to say it's desperate if Carlisle is your Moscow.
Get out of there.
No, I worked in Cumbernauld.
I do love Glasgow too.
Cumbernaud's like is roundabout.
Well, I hated Cumbernauld when I was there, but I appreciate it now.
Yeah.
Although it rains the whole time. You know, that was the whole thing. They designed this beautiful town where the architects went to Italy and saw all these beautiful little houses on the hills in Italy, and then built one in central Scotland, just where the hills rise and the rain comes down.
And I would go there from Glasgow in the morning, and it would be a lovely sunny day, and you'd get to Cumbernauld, and it would be snowing.
I know exactly. My whole life. That's the story of my life. Just one kind of final question, because we're sort of running out of time, which was, as we saw from the excerpt you read, your stories are very political, certainly in this last book, or they contain a lot of political thoughts. How do you make that successful? Because it's quite so often when people have a very overt political ideas, it kind of gets in the way of what they're doing, you know. But it doesn't seem to in your case. So just how, I know it's another tricky question, but how do you think that works, you know? How are you able to sublimate it, or whatever it is that...
I think it comes from a non-party political place. I don't really like the language of politics. It's not particularly easy to understand. It's another kind of, you know, closed language that alienates people, and you can pick it apart. And it's like, oh, do you mean being fair? No, it's like maybe making this accessible would kind of help you. Thing was, like, you know, my parents' marriage was hugely, you know, uneasy with the parent relationships. My mum and me kind of ran away. That teaches you a lot about women and power and relationships and money. And then the first 10 years of my life full time, and then ever after part time, the people I was working with were in prison, in family centers, in rehabilitation centers, in daycare facilities, in elderly care facilities, visually impaired people. I mean, the only socially excluded or powerless group I didn't work with was the deaf, and that's because I don't have deaf sign. Although I did get taught the signs for dirty old man, which were constantly signed by members of staff in the social work department, where I was taught it, because the man who was in charge of the department was an old man of strange habits who didn't know deaf sign. So everybody behind him was going constantly. It's not very useful in conversation, I can say thank you. So that just, you know, this was 1980. 87 I was working in just a multiply deprived area, 88 as well, 89 I was starting to work with people with disabilities, and from then onwards, so that's kind of Thatcher throwing hand grenades at whole communities, and you're looking at the endless tormenting of disadvantaged groups and people who were already dealing with degenerative diseases, or you know, your Huntington's chorea is going to kill you anyway. You really have to torment this person even more, and dealing with people, you know, with Down syndrome or with cerebral palsy, who are just smarter and bright, and just getting so much grief for looking vaguely a little bit odd or getting grief within the system. I mean, you'd go into some places and I talk to groups about what we might do and ask them daft questions. I remember going into one group and, talking about emotions and things like what happens when you get angry. And the whole group as a man said, we get an injection. And it's like, well, not working there, because me coming in will do you harm, because I will get you to articulate how you think and feel, and they will not like that. And eventually I came in with a sort of code of conduct, which is your people will start to genuinely say things after 10 weeks. If you don't want them to, please don't let me come in, because once I have gained their trust, if you throw me out then, or if you hate the work they're producing, then that will hurt them. And you just get this, you just learn about how reality works for most people, and that it is against most people. And that's not political, that's just about being human, and why I was letting them speak while I was learning how to speak. We're all talking about the same things, like here I am and I'm me. There was a mass execution of Native Americans reported, and I always remember, because all of them were just shouting at the crowd, which was also Native Americans, and they were just all saying, here I am, here I am. The last thing they said was, here I am, to people who knew what that meant. That's what we do, because we're not here long. We're just basically saying, here I am, and hoping that the way we say it makes ourselves clear. And that's deeply political and subversive and strange and explosive, and it blows everybody out of their boxes and keeps us potentially all safe, because if I'm here, I have rights and I have obligations and freedoms and the capacity that you could assist. And I don't know how useful I could be, never mind you. And that's education. It's really fundamental. So that's why I write at all. It's because I'm pissed off. But it's very integrated in me, so it probably comes out in a more integrated way.
Well, I just think with that, that raises a whole another layer of questions, I think, and we could probably be here all night. I don't know about you, Louise, if there's anything last you want to say before we wrap up.
Let me just start my first of 20 questions. No, 3 questions. Listen, I really wanted to say thank you, actually, because I was glad you picked up on love. I always get that from your writing, the message of love as a balance, people desperate to give love to each other. And people say that your writing's bleak, don't they, some reviewers, but I don't really. I feel warmth, and I feel that as you said, you're trying to give us something good. It really is quite a generous act, you're writing. You're trying to give us love, you're trying to give us hope, you're trying to give us a way forward. And I thought I'd just ask you to solve all the problems of the world as my final question. One of my friends wants me to ask you, where do we find our hope in such deeply shit times?
See that? I was at dinner in America in 2019, and I was allegedly shy, and I was put at the end with the other shy person, who was an African-American gentleman whose mother had fled the South. And if, he's 60-some, so you kind of work out what she was running away from, not that it's that much different. And obviously the political situation in America was what it was at that point. And we were talking away, and we're on the same beam, so we get louder and louder and stop being careful, and we're having fun, and we're waving our arms, and the rest of the table, as it turned out, had gone quiet and was just watching us because we were the shy people, supposedly. And then I said, do you feel optimistic? And he just gave me the look of someone whose relatives have had centuries of this shit, and it's just now affecting pink people. And it's just such a lovely, innocent question that we pink people ask each other. And if you turn around and ask a black person, what you're maybe asking is, how the hell did you get through this? Because you've had this shit forever. And clearly that community, and like the indigenous communities, have got through this shit. And they got through it with solidarity and with respecting and upholding each other and with having culture and with having shit hot education and with being active and being imaginative and having a kind of spiritual center and finding what that would be and nurturing family and doing all the stuff that's human. So it's interesting because at the moment we're all going, oh, white despair. And that guy is like, you got me. And the next thing he says was, I'm so sorry you're about to be the minority population in America. And I was just howling with laughter.
Can't come soon enough. I think they should speed that great replacement up a bit, quite frankly.
Please.
Bring it on. But humour as well, of course. Those incredible communities have got through with the most brilliant, sharp, dark, life-affirming humour.
I mean, all of that stuff, they worked out, at some stage, people worked out. You can't do, well, yes, we won a victory, but it's not the perfect victory that I particularly wanted. And that corner of it is very dissatisfying. It's like, seriously, we have chips and all you're going to do is urinate on them? Maybe at least give us 24 hours to kind of feel a bit good. That stuff is, oh, man, really?
Right, there you go. Laughter and despair. I think we'll leave it at that.
Fag paper between the two, which is what I love about Glasgow. It's like, it's very realistic.
Yeah, well, exactly. So culture, as we say.
I had a story where a woman with a dog, a bit of a novel, woman with a dog fell downstairs. And if I read it in England, the passage, people just cry. Because it's about people being kind, and it's the crying of people who think nobody is anymore, because that's where England is. And you go to Ireland, and people kind of think, you get an audience going, well, yeah, that's what the decent thing to do is. And if I read it in Glasgow, people just howl with laughter, because it's just, yeah, life's like that. It's always shite. You get through.
There you go. Life's always shite. A great place to be.
That's why you help people, because it's awful.
Well, I have to thank you. I have to thank Louise for having the idea in the first place. I have to thank you for
both of you.
And I thank all our folk out there in Bookland for listening. Perhaps next year in a different world, we can ask you to come along to the shop and do a live event in the shop when we get back to that. That would be fantastic.
I would be delighted. I may wear a mask forever, though, because this is my least favourite part of my face. I'm just very happy in that way.
Well, I think it's going to be a new fashion. I'm going to go around with my mask on and my hood up looking like a street fighter the whole time. Forever. Okay, next week we have Paul Watts, who's going, Professor Paul Watts, who is going to be talking to us about his book, Estate Regeneration and Its Discontents. Sometimes the best world in the world, rebuilding our estates is not done with the cooperation and consent of the residents. Sometimes it's done from the worst points of view, from money making and profit making. This is what Paul has studied, and he's going to come along and talk about his book next week. He will be interviewed by Paul Burnham, who's a prominent housing activist. So I hope you'll come along 6:30 next week and hear that. So I just say thank you once again to Louise, to Alison, and to all you out there, and see you next week. Bye.